Now, America has voted, and while the official results are still pending, most experts say that President-elect Joe Biden will indeed become the 46th President of the United States. But will he alter the U.S. policy on the Middle East? For a discussion around this, I'm joined by Jeenah from the Afro Middle East Center. Good to have you with us this afternoon, Mr. Jeenah. Let's take a look at Joe Biden's stance towards Palestine. Previously, years ago, he was very pro-Palestine, but his stance over the years seems to have changed with him not endorsing any pro-Palestine policies. What is likely to be his stance towards the Middle East moving forward?
Both Biden and his running mate Kamala Harris have made it clear that they're extremely pro-Israel, in fact, and I think that that's what we can expect: more pro-Israeli policies from the Biden presidency. There will be some changes, however. I think on the one hand, for example, that he is not going to follow through on the annexation plan, or what Donald Trump called his peace plan, which basically allowed Israel to annex whole areas of Palestinian territory, etc. He's not going to follow through on that. So that's one change. The other is that he has indicated that he wants to return to those international treaties, etc., that Trump had pulled out from. So, for example, he's made it clear that the U.S. will resume funding of the World Health Organization. We can assume, I think, that this also means that the U.S. will resume funding of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which supports Palestinian refugees. So I think these are two of the areas where there will be a change. But in broad terms, it's going to continue being pro-Israeli. Military aid to Israel, which is something like $4 billion a year, is not going to change or is not going to reduce. He's not even going to move back to Tel Aviv, the American embassy, which Trump moved to Jerusalem.
So you say he will not move back to Tel Aviv?
He will not move back to Tel Aviv, no.
And why do you have that position?
Well, he's already indicated that. In a sense, what he has said, and not in his words, but basically that it's a done deal. The embassy has moved, and that's where it's going to stay. It will also be something of an embarrassment, I think, for the U.S. to move its embassy and then move it back in that kind of way. But as I said, in general terms, he is pro-Israeli. If he were the president before Trump moved the embassy, I don't think he would move it to Jerusalem. But now that it's already done, he's not going to move it back.
You mentioned as well on Trump's peace plan and the fact that he will not go ahead with the annexation. How will that move affect the relations between Israel and Palestine?
Well, the relations between Israel and the Palestinians has been pretty bad for a while. I mean, there's no talks taking place between them. There's no attempt by anyone at finding some kind of a resolution. The closest thing to that was the Trump plan, which basically said that Palestinians should become the vassals of Israel. And so I don't think that that in the immediate future that there's going to be much of a difference in terms of that kind of relationship. I think later on in his presidency, Biden might decide that he needs to address the Palestinian-Israeli issue more head-on and perhaps begin some kind of discussion with the Palestinians. He might agree to reopen the PA offices, the Palestinian Authority offices in the U.S., which were closed by Trump. So there might be some kind of a slight warming of relations as time goes on between the United States and the Palestinians, and that might ease the relationship between the Palestinians and Israel. But I don't think that that's going to happen immediately.
There are several leaders who have tried to initiate and try to put together some sort of a peace deal in the Middle East. Trump, with his latest, annexation plans, was being lauded as having moved further than many others had in the recent past. Do you see Joe Biden actually focusing on these relations as one of his key projects?
Not immediately. I think immediately Trump's bigger foreign policy, Biden's bigger foreign policy objectives will be to reestablish the United States on the international stage as a kind of leader, as he says, and to rebuild the relations with U.S. allies, particularly in the European Union. Those relations have been quite damaged by Trump, and I think that he's going to work towards that. So the Palestinian-Israeli issue will be important in terms of continuing the relationship, but not important enough immediately in terms of making a big intervention. I think in the Middle East, however, there are a few other changes that we will see taking place in the few months after he becomes president. So, for example, there's a good chance that one of the early things would be a return to the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, as it is called. Under Trump, the U.S. withdrew from it. They will likely return to that, which will make a big difference for Iran, certainly. The relationships with Turkey, I think, might change. There was a close relationship between Trump and Turkish President Erdogan. Biden doesn't seem to have the same kind of love for Erdogan as Trump did. And similarly with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, he was protected in various ways by Trump, and Biden has made it clear that that protection is not going to extend to his administration. So I think that there are a few other changes as well in the Middle East in terms of Middle East-American relations that we will see, let's say, in the first half year after he becomes president.
If you could perhaps just summarily take us through some of the reactions from the Middle Eastern leaders to President-elect Joe Biden.
Look, in general, I think Middle East leaders did what is kind of normal in this regard. They sent letters of congratulations or messages of congratulations and hoped that the relationship will continue or improve or whatever the case is. I think that, however, many of them are a bit concerned about what it means. So, for example, it took the Saudis 1.5 days before they issued a message of congratulations. And the result, the reason for that is that the Saudis are concerned that the relationship certainly between the Crown Prince and the new president won't be as it has been. I think the relationship between the institutions of the two states will continue, but not the personal level. Then similarly with Egypt. Egypt was one of the first countries to send a message of congratulations. But President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi knows that the kind of way in which Trump treated him is not necessarily the same kind of way that Biden will. Remember, Trump referred to Sisi as my favorite dictator. And Biden picked up on that and noted that kind of comment by Trump, and he's not going to regard Sisi in the same kind of way. The Iranians issued no message directly of congratulations or anything else to Biden, but certainly in terms of their public statements, they've made it clear that they expect a different kind of relationship with Biden, and particularly they expect the U.S. to return to the JCPOA. So I think that the general kind of public response has been of congratulations from most, except for Iran, certainly. But when we look beyond that, I think there is some concern among those that Trump had developed a particular kind of relationship with, that relationship might not continue.
Well, thank you so much for that update. That's Jeenah there from the Afro Middle East Center. Certainly a lot of shifting that will be taking place in the next few months as far as international relations are concerned.